Is preparing. Okay, great. Perfect. Manali, I am so excited to have you here today. Oh my goodness. I know that we're going to dive into some really exciting things about psychology. We both have such a love for that, and I'm excited to dive in. Hopefully, everyone who's here live is also excited to dive in. But first, before we do that, go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us who you serve and how it is that you serve them.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited to be on the podcast today. It's been a long time coming. So excited to
It
dive
really
into all
has.
the things and chat with you about it all. I'm Manali. I'm the owner of Manali Photography. So I started my wedding photography business back in 2018 and did weddings for almost a decade actually. And then I started pivoting a little bit after 2020. So now I edit for wedding photographers and have a small team of editors as well. And then most of the work that I'm doing currently is as an integrator and as a launch manager for other creatives within our space who have digital products and courses, which is super, super fun. And so that's a little bit of what I do nowadays.
And you not only, so you've got your editor team,
Mm-hmm.
and then you also have, like, you work within a team. And if I'm wrong in the way I'm kind of analogizing this, tell me, but
Mm-hmm.
as the head of other people's teams, essentially,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you are just all in the team space. And let's be
Yeah.
real, not only is just being a solopreneur overwhelming and just like managing your time and knowing what to work on when and all of that overwhelming, but then you start adding team members into it and it becomes even more so. And yet, this is what you do all day, every day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How? I mean, that to me, that's my biggest question is just
Mm-hmm.
how? How do you do that? How do you make sure that not only are you being efficient, but your
Mm-hmm.
team is being efficient and other people's teams are being efficient? And how
Mm-hmm.
in the world do you go about doing that? Because the I just being a small part of a team
Mm-hmm.
feels overwhelming to me. And yet you're just like running teams like it's nothing. And it's amazing. It amazes me.
Well, I feel like it's kind of funny because I'm laughing now because in college, like, or even in high school, I did not like group projects. Like, I was not the person that was like, yay, go group projects. I was like, oh man, group project. Um, but it is, I'm like literally realizing this as you're saying this on the podcast right now. Like, yeah, I am like in and out of teams. Like, I run my own, I'm part of other people's, helping them kind of like run theirs as well. And I have always been like a systems and organization person. And so before I kind of like went into the creative world and like started my photography business, like my potential like kind of like dream job of like what I was looking to do was project management, but for software companies because I
Mm.
actually have a CS degree. I did not go to school for anything like business related. I actually ended up doing like a psychology major for fun, so that's like playing into our conversation today, which is fun. But I am like the person who loves organizing things, loves like logistics and planning backwards from like a date or a deadline to figure out, okay, like what are all the things that have to happen? Like who is in charge of everything? Like when do different components have to like come in so that they can all work together? That is like my love language. So I live out of Asana, the project management tool for the most part, or if I have clients that are in Trello or Notion out of their like project management systems. So I feel like for every single client, we have like a project that's like dedicated to them that has all of the stuff and like when everything is happening for them. And then I also have my own where I like can see all at one time like what's happening with my editing clients, what's happening with my team, and what's happening like what I am in charge of for my clients' work. So it all lives in one place because otherwise, if I had to bop around to everything all of the time, I would get a lot of overwhelmed. So I have a system and that like helps me kind of keep all the things organized. So I think that that's how I do it. Yeah.
I will say though, like, so for everyone watching or
Mhm.
listening,
Yeah.
I work with Manali in one of her clients. I do copywriting, and you are the most organized integrator I've ever worked with.
Really?
Like, yes, yes. I love working with you. I'm like, wow, her Asana, everything's laid out so nicely. I know exactly where to find everything that I need.
Mhm.
Like, we don't have a lot of back and forth because
Mm.
you're so organized. Whereas I feel like I've been on other teams where I'm like, hey, I need this. Hey, I need this. Hey, where is this thing? Hey, and you are just like, everything is where it's supposed to be. It's all laid out so nicely and easy to find. And it's just was so wonderful. So I, you're great at what you do, all that being said.
Thank you. Yeah.
Um, but I also feel like you're selling yourself short a little bit because so many people love organizations and systems. I love
Hmm.
organizations and systems. And I think that does play so well into what you're doing. But you also, there's so much more to all of being an integrator than just being organized and having
Yeah.
systems. Like you
Yeah.
are leading people, you are managing people. And to me, that part of it is so impressive because you just do it from the outside looking in. You do it so easily, like, you know.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I feel like it's one of those things where like you don't realize something is as big of a strength until like people outside of you are like, "Oh, hey, actually like
Yeah.
that's insane. Like you're doing a phenomenal job." So thank you so much. And I'm like laughing internally because I am in and out of a lot of different creatives like systems. So like their website platform, their email platform, like their Google Drive and stuff. And everyone's like, "Oh no, like I don't know, it's like so messy." And I'm like, it's really not. Like if you look at my stuff internally, like it's organized. It's probably not like as organized as maybe somebody would like think, but I like know where to find everything. And like the biggest thing I think that's helpful is like if I don't have everything all documented in one place as to where everything is. I have a cat too, so I totally love and get this, and we have lots of cat
I
conversations
really hope that
too.
he's going to pop up on the screen too.
I'm sure Keegan, well, I don't know. It's his nap time right now. So we'll see if he makes an appearance too. That's
Yeah.
my cat.
I saw him in the
Um,
window when we first hopped on, but we'll
yes,
see.
yeah, he was sitting here and I thought he was going to walk across, but he decided I was being loud and annoying and probably went to go nap. So I feel like I like need to set up my clients' project management systems in a way where it's like, okay, all the information that I need is kind of like in one central place because otherwise like that's a lot to keep track of one business, let alone for multiple clients at a time. And also when you're like working with team members and they're in and out of it, like it's really helpful when they don't have to necessarily ask me like, hey, like where is this? But it's like all centralized and easy for them to find and easy for them to have like the materials and stuff that they need to get their job done. Um, but I will say, like selfishly, like my brain needs that to keep
Mhm.
everything organized for my clients as well. So yeah.
Well, and it helps those of us working with you
Hmm.
as well. It just, again, you're so organized and I love it. I love working with you. But probably something I should have asked you at the very jump. So let's back up for a second.
Hmm.
What is an
Yeah.
integrator for those that don't know?
An integrator is somebody who works like with their clients to help them manage taking, I would say, like a big idea or taking a big project or taking a launch or a relaunch of a product or like a course or even like an educational program. And they're helping you break down all of the small tasks that need to happen in order to bring that like vision and that idea into reality and like actually get it done because a lot of us creatives like we have no shortage of creative ideas and things that we want to do. I think the gap for a lot of us is like the actual execution and the implementation of everything. And a lot of times like we'll have a fire idea and we'll get really excited and we'll kind of like start and then we get into like the messy middle and the weeds of it and that's where a lot of people like will actually like pull back just because there's so much that goes into things that we don't necessarily always see or think of on the front end of things. You know, we're like seeing people launch stuff and we're like, oh my gosh, so exciting. And then like you talk to somebody who's like actively going through the launch and there's like so many tasks and things that have to happen behind the scenes. And so an integrator is the person who's kind of coming in and helping you break that down and like hopefully putting it into something like a project management
Mhm.
system where we know like okay, like here are all of the tasks. here are the dates of like when these realistically like need to be done, especially if there's multiple people on the team helping with the different components, to then like have everything kind of like seamlessly work from the front end. And also as an integrator, like I really like to be like your, not just like your right hand gal, but like somebody who's also thinking and like brainstorming and like visioning kind of with you, or really like helping you like stay in that seat of being the visionary and not have to get into the weeds of things. But I work with a handful of clients and I like to like basically know their business inside and out, like as if it was my own, because that helps me not only like manage all the details, but also understand, okay, like where are they going and like what is the dream and the goal for them and like what all do they want to accomplish from a high level perspective as well.
I feel like that phrase of keeping you in the visionary seat so you're not stuck in the weeds is something you just need to plaster all over your website. How do like okay, walk me through
Mhm.
a client comes to you, they
Mhm.
have an idea.
Yeah.
What next?
What next? So usually we have like a pretty long Zoom call that's like just talking through like, okay, what is the idea? Is it new? Like, who is like the audience and the ideal client behind it? Like, do we have like the separate like components? Like, generally, I'll talk with them about vision stuff for a while and like, okay, like, how does this fit into like your overall offer suite and that kind of thing first. Um, and then I'm generally the person who's starting to ask more logistical questions of like, okay, like how, like on the back end, like what is funneling into this product? What is like the upsell, like post this product, like all of the logistical things of like price point, like how are we pricing this? Or like, what is the pricing strategy behind it? And like helping them figure that out too, because a lot of times they're like, I don't know, like I have this idea. What do you think of this price point? So I'm not just like putting all of the things in place. I'm like really like I wouldn't say I'm like in a coaching seat, but we're talking back and forth on those high level things that you are potentially also like taking to a coach or help like making those high level decisions around things. So generally a lot of our time is upfront, like one, really me like learning and really figuring out like, okay, what does this like completed project in an ideal world look like for the actual like client that I'm working with? What does it look like for their audience? Like, how does it fit in with their overall business? And then we start diving into the deeper, like in the weeds details of like pricing, launch plan, marketing schedule. Like, okay, like, do we need to make a new sales page? Are we leveraging an existing one and like overhauling it or tweaking it in different ways? So we kind of start big picture, and then start funneling down into more of the details. And then I'm generally taking all of that information from our Zoom calls and mapping that out in their Asana or their Trello, and then breaking it down any further into like, okay, like logistically, what all needs to happen and like who is this going out to when. So generally like my clients are they don't have to be the one like breaking everything down in that granular level, or like a lot of times like they know how to do that but it lives in their head, right? Especially if it's just them or it's like maybe them working with like one VA or something.
Mhm.
So they get to kind of like free up that big like, okay, like let me actually break this down, like put everything like into the different pieces and like what needs to happen when. A lot of people that I work with are like, just tell me what to do when and I will do it. And that's helpful, you know, to them because they don't want to have to like take the time to then like lay it all out. So I would say that's kind of the overall process. And then generally, like I'll give them to dos, and then I have my own to dos or to dos that are going out within the team as well. And we do check ins pretty regularly to be like, okay, like here's what we finished or started working on this, but now I have like a logistical question for you again. So we have a good amount of communication, I would say, both over Zoom and Voxer as well for like all of those like little in between things.
Mhm.
And I am like physically in their platform. So like I'm in people's flow desk or in their show it and learning really like the ins and outs of things. Again, like I mentioned, I see a lot of the inside of everyone's everything, because I'm physically in there and almost like operating as if I'm them, like building out a sales page or something for them. So,
Yeah. So for everyone who's like, okay, I need you in my business,
mhm.
we'll have your website linked, but what do they need to know?
Ooh, what do they need to know? I would say one one thing that I would say is it feels like a lot, and I know it can be really scary to invite somebody into your business at that of like high of a level because we
Mm,
really see everything. But also like rest assured, like you may feel like it's really messy or like you don't have a system or like like all of those like insecurities and those doubts that come in when you're letting somebody like have a lay of the land essentially kind of to a certain extent. Um, but there is literally never any judgment ever. Like I promise you, like my show it or my flow desk is like just as messy and like it's not that bad, like I promise. And like if we need something, we will ask you for like a specific link and we're gonna be in there helping you kind of like organize it so you have structure like moving forward. And then I would say the other part of it is like the investment, I think, is also a little scary for a lot of
mm,
people. But I think after even like a month of working with people, they start to be like, okay, this is like I have another me in the business. This isn't just I'm bringing in like a VA or someone who I have to tell what to do for everything. So it really frees up a lot of, I figured, a lot of like time and mental energy. And it's like having that like strategic business partner in it with you, which is just really fun because like entrepreneurship gets a little lonely when it's like just you. And like a lot of times, like there's so much pressure for us to like lead everything right. So yeah, that's what I would say.
absolutely. So for those who aren't ready yet for
Mhm.
hiring you or hiring an integrator in general,
Mhm.
or maybe even they're not even ready to hire a VA,
Mhm.
how can they be more efficient? If they're not able to hand all of that off,
Mhm.
how do they make the most of their time and be the most
Mhm.
efficient and, oh, I've got this idea, I've got to break it down, or
Mhm.
getting stuck in that messy middle? Like, what's the first thing they need to do next?
So this probably sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I would say the first thing to do is make sure that you have scheduled time to like take a bird's eye view of the business.
Mm,
Because I think a lot of times it's not necessary. I mean, like, one, yes, we always feel like we don't have enough time. I know that there's people who are going through seasons where you literally have limited work hours. However, I think part of what kind of adds to the overwhelm of things is like we just get stuck in the cycle of doing things, and we might be doing things that aren't necessarily like moving us in the direction that we want, but we're just doing it because we see it or we think we should. Um, or it's just kind of just like a filler task or like a busy task that isn't actually moving the needle forward. So I would say like one, schedule in time to actually take a bird's eye view of everything to like actually evaluate, okay, like what is most important. And then when you're taking that time, that's when I would say, like, break it down into the little steps because I think a lot of times, like, we'll have an idea, but then we won't actually go to break it down. So we misjudge the amount of time, energy, and effort it's going to take us to actually complete it. And we, like, don't actually have the space in our schedule to, like, follow through on it. It's not like, oh, you don't have enough motivation or willpower. Like, it just might not work in your schedule realistically when you go to plot it out on your schedule. Um, so I would say like after you have a good idea of like, okay, like this is the one project that I want to focus on for the upcoming quarter or the upcoming month, like start to kind of like break that down, look at your calendar and start to kind of like slot out like, okay, when am I like in general thinking of working on these different parts of this project? Because it'll give you a really good idea of like, oh, I thought I was going to be able to complete this in a month, but actually, this is going to take me like 3 months when I like break it down with the amount of like time that I have to work on it outside of like client work and life and like I'm not and like this is one of those things where I kind of vaguely map it out and like does it get pushed around? Like yes, obviously like it's like a flexible thing, but it'll give you a more solid idea of like okay, how do we actually make this happen and
what's
like do I have the
realistic?
time and space? Yeah. And breaking it down, you start to kind of see like oh, this might be somewhere where I might get stuck because I don't have an answer to a decision that I need
Mm,
to make. And so you can think about it then as opposed to trying to make that decision when you're in the midst of doing it. Because a lot of times, if we have to make a really big decision or come up with something from scratch while we're working, that feels really overwhelming to us. And then we'll kind of just like avoid it and push it to the back burner. So I think like looking at that beforehand and kind of being like, oh, okay, I see I need to like make a decision around this first before I can actually work on it. That's really helpful. And then there was something else I was going to say, and I totally just love it. It just flew away from my brain. So,
Well, if it comes back, let me know. But I'm
okay.
curious. So,
Mhm,
peek behind the curtains for everyone.
mhm,
When I was only working in my business and
mhm,
I had, 40 hours a week, however many
mhm,
hours a week I wanted to
mhm,
work, I had the hardest time understanding what tasks actually moved the needle for me in my business.
mhm,
I, you know, sometimes I look back at that time, I'm like, man, I got so much done. And I did, but I wasn't necessarily, I was doing things that made me feel good because
mhm,
everything in my business felt really nice and organized, and I
mhm,
felt on top of things. But I wasn't necessarily moving the needle as much
mhm.
versus now I'm only working, 10, 15, 20 hours a week, depending on the week in the business.
Yeah.
And I get so much less done. And the organization part of my brain is like, oh, but I want to work on like making sure everything's nice and organized over here.
Mhm, mhm,
But I'm only really working on things that move the needle. And so I'm forced to choose the things that I have to get done.
yeah.
But I think if I went back to working full time in the business, I would have the same problem, even though I've been in this space. So I guess I'm curious, do you have any advice for anyone else who feels that same way of just like, I don't know what actually moves the needle. I know that obviously client work makes me
Mhm,
money, but outside of
mhm.
that, as an educator, what actually moves the needle? I don't know.
Are we talking specifically for the service side or the education side?
I'm thinking more education. I feel
Actually,
like service side is, oh,
yeah.
you go.
I was gonna say, actually, I think my answer is the same. I would tell that regardless of like if it's client or education, like look at your analytics because your numbers will probably tell you. So I think
Mhm.
that that would be my answer of like, okay, from like an education perspective, like revenue wise, like what's bringing in the most revenue, or from like if you're like specifically talking about marketing, like look at your marketing analytics, like is there a platform that's like vastly outperforming others that maybe you like didn't think about? Because I've seen that. I'm talking personally, like Pinterest for me was far and away like the biggest lead gen for me, but it was something that I didn't put a lot of time and energy towards. Like a lot of my brain space went towards Instagram, which is great and useful. But like if I was being really strategic about it, I'd be like, okay, how can I better leverage Pinterest as something that's already working for me even more, you know? And if you're like somebody who's taking on service-based clients, I would kind of say the same thing of like, okay, like where are your bookings actually coming from? And like how can you leverage what's already working?
Mhm. I also feel like this is one of those places where having an integrator or just having a friend that you co-work with every now and then to be like
Yeah.
bounce ideas off of, because I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of times it's really easy to get stuck in those, but I need to do this or I need to do this.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
having someone who can easily do that bird's eye view is
Yeah.
so helpful from really taking that, like, here's
Mhm.
what you're doing and here's what it's actually doing for you
Yeah.
kind of look.
Yeah. I would also say like looking for the gap is also kind of helpful too.
Mhm.
Of like specifically for the education side, like if we're talking about breaking down a funnel, like a lot of people will be like, well, this product's like just not selling well. And I'm like, okay, well, there's so many steps before the purchase of the product. So like really pinpointing, is it like one, we don't have enough people like getting onto the email list? Or is it two, are people not opening the emails? Or are they opening the emails but not clicking through at the rate that we need them to the sales page? Or is the sales page conversion number off? Or is like the purchase checkout conversion the actual
Mhm.
problem and the sticking point? So like literally breaking it down step by step like that. And again, I think I applied the same thing when it came to like my photography business and booking clients too. Because a lot of times, like if you're missing out on bookings, you might be, well, like, I need to overhaul my website. And it's like, is the website the actual gap, or is it like you're losing people after a consultation call? So it's like getting really granular and really pinpointing from, again, still like a data and a numbers point, like where is the gap and what do we actually need to like solve and fix, as
Mhm.
opposed to like, oh no, it's not working. Like, no, there's parts of it I promise that are working. It's just like it, and that's hard too when you're in it because we are so emotionally attached to things and like we are so close to it. And so I think it is just a little bit easier when you are working with somebody or even talking to a business friend who can even just like ask you those questions too, right? Because I'm saying this and it is so easy for me to pinpoint for my clients, but this is like the hardest thing for me still as a business owner.
100%.
100%.
100%.
So,
100%. There's so much like I had this conversation on Instagram recently of like, have you ever hired a you in your own business? Because what I can do so easily for my clients, I cannot do as easily for myself. And I'm like,
mhm,
man,
mhm,
I know marketing is so important.
right.
And if I can't do it for myself, I need to hire some. Um, I also, when it comes to an offer not performing like we want it to, it's almost always numbers. Almost every single time, it's that you don't have enough people getting eyes on it. And it's really that
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing to hear because it's not an easy fix. And it's not a
hmm
quick fix. It's a continue to do what you're doing over and over again fix. And no one wants that.
Yeah, and it's also hard because it's like if you're doing it right, like you're fixing one thing at a time and then
Mm.
you're retesting it and making sure that it's solved for before we go to touch any other part of the funnel. And so it requires a lot of patience, and that's
Hmm.
really, really hard. And a
Yeah.
lot of eyeballs too, like just to go through it and test, like, okay, the conversion is up at this specific point. So,
Yep. And you make that tiny fix and then you wait and you wait and you wait. And then you can check it. And then it's like, okay,
mhm,
well, that did or didn't work. And if it didn't work, what's next? And it's just months and months to continue to tweak one little thing,
mhm,
um, which is hard. That patience is so hard, especially once you're established in your business, because at
mhm.
first, as you're getting established, it's a million things on your to-do list at all
Yes.
times.
Yeah.
And it's less about being patient and more about going out there and doing, 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 doing.
hmm hmm
And then you get established and you're like, okay, there's not a lot of doing, it's a lot of waiting and a lot of
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah. No, it's a huge shift, and I think that that's something that has been so hard for me personally, and for a lot of people too, because I think we are the doers and we're like ambitious and we're like, you tell us what to do and we will do it. You know what I mean? To like fix the problem. But I agree. I think that there's definitely a shift once you're established, and it just takes a lot more patience, and like almost it feels like we're doing the same thing over and over again. And so it's so much easier to try a bunch of different things, to like fix a problem because you feel like you're doing work, but it might not be what's like actually fixing the problem or moving the needle forward. And it's hard. I get it. Like it's so hard
Yeah.
for me still. Yeah.
No, I know, and it's so easy to say and not always easy to do. But
Mhm.
okay, so let's talk about breaking something down.
Mhm.
You said to specifically break it down on your schedule. Let's say you have a client that comes to you and they want to create a new opt-in.
Mhm.
How do we break that down? How would you go about that process with them specifically?
Um, I would say first things first, like I feel like there's always phases. So the first phase is probably like market research, unless you like kind of have that data already coming in of figuring out like, okay, like what would be the most effective opt-in? Like what do your people need from you? How are we like titling this in a way where like the actual marketing and the messaging is compelling? So I'd say that's kind of the first component of it is like the research. And I think there's a lot of research that goes into things to make it an offer or even just like an opt-in like really strong and good. And a lot of times we like skip over that phase and we want to like go straight to like the build phase because like
Yeah.
that's what we like and that's what we're really good at. So I would say that that's kind of the first phase of it. The second phase of it, I would say, is actually like building it out and testing it. So again, another phase that gets kind of skipped over is like testing it, is getting it out to actual people and getting it in their hands and having them like try it out and then coming back to you with like very like honest feedback of like, okay, this was great, but I had like these three questions that didn't get answered, or oh, I thought I was gonna like learn about XYZ in this, but it didn't get it covered. And so I think that like a lot of people will call it beta testing, or just, and this doesn't have to be like a formal process of sorts. Like it can be a very like behind the scenes thing that you do, but I would say like, and I tell my clients this too all the time. It's like, well, this is like what I think about this, but however, I'm like so in your business that I'm like pretty biased. Like I am not your
Mhm.
like student or your client necessarily, you know what I mean? So like get it into the hands of like your actual students and your clients and see what questions they have, because from a knowledge perspective, they might have questions that you wouldn't even think about or like think to like put in there, or will have, or it will even like phrase things. Like if you ask them to write a testimonial about it, they'll phrase the content in a way that's going to be so effective for the other people who want to like use and like that the opt-in is like meant for, and they might phrase it in a way that's different than what you would, but that's going to be the most effective for like your actual clients, right, and your students. So I would say the second phase is like building it and testing it, and then the third phase is like launching it, like then looking at the analytics around that and then further tweaking it from there. um, and like really like the marketing phase of it, making sure that that opt-in is like something that gets built into your like routine marketing schedule, not like, okay, this is like a fun new thing, and then like 6 months later like you're building another one like really quickly right off the bat before everyone, like before it becomes like common and known for your audience that hey, this is like a signature opt-in or a signature offer. Like you have to like talk about it until you're kind of blue in the face, and that part is hard because we feel like we're like saying the same thing over again or like just presenting the one thing. But it takes repetition for people to understand like, oh, this is like your new opt-in, or like this is your like signature topic or like theme that you talk about like in and through the opt-in. So I would say
Yeah.
that those are kind of the three phases that I would say right off the bat. And I feel like as an integrator, I really help people like think about and like not skip over like the market research kind of proportion of it, the beta testing being like, hey, like I actually need testimonials about this opt-in before we actually like really like publish it and put it out there, to make it really stronger. And then the analytics and like actually looking at the numbers about it after it has been launched to be like, okay, like what part of this worked? Are there any parts that we need to tweak? Like could the conversion on the landing page be stronger in like XYZ like
Mhm.
places, that sort of thing. Um, so again, it's all those like little things that like we know we should do, but we maybe like skip over because we're really excited, right? Which is
Mhm.
good and great, and like you need that. However, it's like the counterbalance to that too, and that's why I think it's really helpful to have like the like visionary and the integrator who work together, because you kind of balance both of those out. Um, and I'm still like, I am saying all of this, but the same thing happens whenever I go to like launch my own opt-in. Like the same, it's just part of like human psychology, I think, to a certain degree. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, the cobbler's children have no shoes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you work with a ton of visionaries. When someone's a visionary, they tend to have a lot of big ideas and a lot of
Mhm.
projects they want to tackle.
Mhm.
But how many projects do you recommend per quarter?
Okay, this is my hot take. I would say like one project a quarter, because I think if you're going to do all of these phases, no matter what the project is, like whether it's an opt-in or something else, um, I think it gives you enough time to actually like break everything down, do it well, get the feedback, and then tweak and implement, or like implement and then tweak after you have the feedback, right? So
Mhm.
I say like one thing a quarter, which sounds kind of insane probably to some people, being like, what? But especially like if you're working with a team and you want things kind of built out where you're not like trying to build it as you're going and like I would say 3 months for a project. Yeah.
Well, and this is, gosh, I started my business 2018, so what, 7 years in business? I don't
Hmm.
know, whatever the math is. This is my first year ever doing that. And it's made, I mean, we're only in April, but it's made such a difference in how
Hmm.
stressed I feel or don't
Yes.
feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's also like the pacing of that is way more sustainable because
So
you're
much
not
more.
rushing to get something done within like the month and like you have enough time to kind of like look at your schedule and be like, okay, well, realistically, like I'm at a conference and like that week is maybe not the week that I am going to be able to also do something like really work intensive, right? Like
Mhm.
you can kind of take a look at that and like, or if something happens, like life happens all the time, like you have the breathing space and the leeway to kind of like shift and move things around a little bit. Um, but also specifically when it comes to the education side of things, because there's like so many tasks and so many components of everything, like I pretty much tell people like, hey, like for a launch, like we need 3 months. Also, 3 months is a really good amount of time to be able to like prime your audience as well for like, hey, like this is kind of like the thing that's coming up. Like it just gives you enough like space, especially because I feel like in the education space, like we are kind of shifting away from the, oh, we just have like a launch week where it's just 1 week of promotion and it's like an email every single day or like multiple emails.
Mm.
Like that in 2025 looks a little bit different and like people are spreading it out over time and giving a little bit more space in between those. Um,
Mm.
so like launches as a whole have kind of like shifted in that way to allow that space even like during the launch period itself. And so I think it's even more important to like space out your like pre-launch then too accordingly.
I mean, even if you're doing an older type launch, quote
Hmm.
unquote, you need that. You need 12 weeks of pre-launch, especially if it's
Yeah.
a brand new offer. Like
Yeah, if it's new. Yeah.
if you have never launched a software before,
Hmm.
you need 12 weeks. If you have launched it, you probably still need at least 8. Like
Hmm.
you've got to prime your audience. And as you mentioned, it takes so much marketing and so much content to get people to actually see what you're
Hmm.
putting
Hmm.
out. You've
Yep.
got to put out enough so that they see something.
Yeah.
And you've got to have time. It's all about that patience.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna make sure we're scheduling time to take in that bird's eye view. We're gonna break down our task. We're only gonna have one project per quarter. What other tips do you have for being more efficient in our
Mhm.
businesses?
Um, I feel like I feel like this is the coach in me, and I'm like, it's gonna depend on whoever is sitting across from me. Um, and so I think different things work for different people, right? Like for me, I track my time. That helps me
Mhm.
stay more efficient. For you, it might be putting your phone in a different room. Like I would say, like this is such a coaching answer. Like, figure out what it is that is getting in the way of being efficient with your time and try to solve for that. So those are two like really simple things. But I would say tracking your time is probably like a good place to start because if you have a little timer that's going off and like you're starting to like get distracted and do other things,
Mhm.
it like kind of reins that in really quickly for me at least. Um, or I know some people like really do well when they have like the like Pomodoro technique where you like work for 25 minutes, then you take a 5 minute break. But I would
I,
say like go for it. What were you gonna say?
well, I was just gonna say, I am really bad at tracking my time. You might have noticed this. There was one day last week where I went to go work on something for one of our clients, and I was like, oh, this timer's been running for 14 hours. Cool. And so I had to go back in and be like, I only worked this long. Let me change that. But the Pomodoro method works really well for me, where I'm like, okay, 25 minutes, I'm focused on this one thing.
Really?
And so it's interesting. I wonder if there's
Yeah.
like Is that something that like some people work well with one and some people work well with the other?
I wonder. I
Because
don't know because I was gonna say like a Pomodoro, like the 25 on, 5 minutes off, like just does not work for me because when I'm in
it's
it, I'm like
interesting.
so in it that like I usually go like 45 minutes and sometimes I can go like 60 to 90 minutes. After 90, I think like I'm just done. But I know that that's not the norm and most people don't like stay in set
Okay.
like that for that long. And like, but for me, if I have to stop after 20, like stop myself after 25 minutes, I get so frustrated. So
Okay,
it's like
I
it
want to
really depends
know.
on you, you know? What were you
Yeah, I
saying?
want to know in the
Yeah.
comments, are you team Pomodoro timer
Yeah.
or are you team just time tracking? Or do both work for you? So if you're
Hmm.
watching this, let us know in the comments because I'm
Okay.
so curious about this. Is this something that one works better for the other or some like I don't know. Because yeah, I if I'm tracking my time, I forget I'm tracking. I just go and like I log in the next day and I'm like, oh, I did
Oh,
not
it's
work
still
14
running.
hours. Yeah,
Yeah.
I am bad about that. So yeah, but the Pomodoro did like when that timer goes off, I'm like, all right, I'm done.
You're like
And then I
out.
go walk
Yeah.
around for 5 minutes and then I can get right back in. But obviously that doesn't work for everyone.
See, I don't, well, you tell me, like, are you pretty quick to like get into a task and get out?
It depends.
Okay. Yeah.
Like when I'm first, which I probably need I know I need like a startup routine when I'm first getting into things. If I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
plan, it takes
Mm,
me time. But if I have a plan and I know at this time I'm working on this thing, I'm
mm.
pretty good at like getting into it quickly. But the thing
Okay.
is with the 5 minute breaks, I have to do something brainless. I
Mm,
can't like if I start scrolling on my phone
mm,
or thinking about like business things or trying to
mm-hmm.
problem solve something, it doesn't work. But if
Yeah.
I'm like
Yeah.
I'm literally gonna go walk around my house for 5 minutes and just pick up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
that it's so brainless and I'm getting
Mm,
that movement and I'm also
yeah.
getting to clean my house a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to jump right back in. But I really have to do like brainless things for that 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, yeah, no, it doesn't work. Then I end up sitting down or like getting pulled into something and not ever
Yeah.
going back to my desk.
Yeah, I feel like it's so interesting. And this is why I like talking to other creatives or like going on podcast interviews because it's like what works for some people. Like people, every single person's brain operates differently. And so it's like really crazy to hear like what works for one person versus another, which is why I'm
Yeah.
always so hesitant to be like, this is what to do. And I think there's so much of that too in the creative space of like, this is the most productive way to do XYZ. And I'm like, if it works for you, like amazing and great, but also
Yeah.
don't feel like you need to force yourself into that and like figure out like what works for you because it might be different than what is even like mainstream, right? Because
Mhm.
like you how you said like oh I like if I know exactly what I'm supposed to work on at that time frame like then it's easy for me to get into. I like I used to do that, but I've found over the last couple of years, I now like rebel against like if it's like do this
Mhm.
task at 11, like I do a lot better if it's like here are the three things that like kind of like need to get done today, but I'm gonna like pick and choose what I want to do like right now with the understanding that like they will all get done. But
Yeah.
like um I like time batching like just does not work for my brain anymore. I just have
Yeah.
like the overall kind of list of like okay for the day or even like I've kind of expanded it out to be like here are the things that need to get done this week, you know?
Mm. See, and I can't, if I just give myself a list of things that need to get done, I will put too much on my own plate. I'm so
Mm,
bad about that. And so what I have to do is go, okay, I know that I'm gonna spend 1 hour on, like I have a themed day each week.
mm-hmm,
That's my highest priority is whatever the theme is for the day. I'm
mm,
gonna spend
mm-hmm,
1 hour doing that. So like today was marketing. And so today I spent an hour working on marketing things. And then I know, okay, I also need to spend 1 hour on this client, 1 hour on
mm-hmm,
this, and I've got these different blocks mapped out, but within those blocks, I've got like various to-do lists, and it's just as much as I can get done in that time block.
mm,
Because
yeah,
otherwise, I cannot, all these years into entrepreneurship, I cannot figure out the right amount of things to put on my plate for a day or a week. And so
mm,
I
mm-hmm,
inevitably will give myself way too much. and then I get frustrated and just it's a mess.
I like will map this out on Asana. So if I start to see there's way too many tasks on a Tuesday, I'll like physically move them around
Yeah.
because I can kind of like see the length of things, or like even if like there's a week where I'm like, whoa, that's a lot, like then I can
Mhm.
kind of like reconfigure. Um, but because otherwise I would try to do everything I possibly could on every single Monday, which is what I used to do before I
I'm always
started
just
kind of
like,
like
but maybe
moving
I
up the
could
week.
just, if I just have time, I'll just put this here and I might just have to, like, I don't know. I don't know
Oh,
why I'm
oh
like
yeah.
that, you know? Um, so I
That's the
just,
hardest thing. I used to be like that for years, and then I started to get really overwhelmed with the amount. So now I'm kind of like, there's like an amount of space that I know on Asana realistically of the number of tasks that I can like
mm,
realistically finish in a day. And if that list is longer, then I just like, I know it's not going to happen as much as I want to. I'm like, I'm just going to stress myself out. So I
yeah,
like preemptively move it. But it's taken a little bit too. And I think it's one of those things where this type of stuff has also like shifted and changed for me over time,
yeah,
like as I've evolved as a person. And I feel like what used to work for you might not be the thing that actually works right now. So like
yeah,
grace to like change it up, switch it up, and like go with what works for you like in this season too, you know?
yeah, 100%.
Sorry, there's
Okay. If you could give everyone one action step to take this week based on what we've talked about today, what would it be?
I would say action step would be to block off time to get that higher level view of your business. Whether you want to do that once a week, once a month, or once a quarter, um, that would be the thing that I would recommend, and like treat it like a client meeting and don't keep scheduling things over it.
Okay,
So
well, you don't need to call me out like that. No, I'm just kidding.
whatever you need to do that, which I'm saying this to myself because I was I was kind of like very honestly I was guilty of that last year, and
Mhm.
by the time I hit Q3 I started to like see the effects of it and was like, okay, no, can't do this. Um so I mean, not calling you out. I'm like calling myself out, trying to be better about that myself too. So
I was better about it when I had more time. And then as I've cut back my hours in the business,
hmm
I've gotten
hmm
worse at it. But now my husband is helping a lot in the business and he's working, adding more and more business work to his plate. And last week he was like, we have to start having weekly meetings. So we have them on the calendar
yeah,
now.
yeah.
We did our first one last week, but it was like, okay,
hmm
this is good. This is gonna force me to actually like have those meetings because
hmm
otherwise it was like, but I could work on client work.
Yeah. And see, maybe that's like one of those things where it's like do it with an accountability buddy, because like
Yeah.
you're not gonna like schedule over like talking it out with a friend, you know? Like you might for yourself.
Yeah.
Um, which like don't do that to yourself, and like treat your own time as like just as valid. But also like realistically, like
Yeah.
it happens. And so I think if you can have like somebody else who's kind of like doing that with you, also it's like more time as an entrepreneur with other people and humans, which is
So
good for us.
nice.
So
So
yeah.
nice. Okay. And as you know, I don't let anyone get away without giving a book recommendation. So if you could
Ooh.
recommend one book to everyone, it could be business, but it doesn't have to be. What would it be?
That's so hard. I have been reading so much recently and not anything business related.
That's okay.
Um, um, I just read like The Crimson Moth, which is like a fantasy
Okay.
one. Um, and it was like it was a duology, so it's two books, but it was just like a really unique take on fantasy fiction that I hadn't like seen in a little while. I don't know. It was good. I really liked it.
Okay.
So
I
yeah,
have not read that one. I'm going to add that to my TBR list right
yeah,
now.
it was good. So yeah, that would be my rec.
Okay, perfect. Well, I have all of your links down below
Okay.
in the description or in the show notes, depending on how people are watching and tuning in.
Mhm.
But any any specific place that you want them to check out?
I would say I'm probably most active on Instagram. So come say hi in the DMs. Even if you're just like want to talk book recs, because I will talk about that all day long, or cats, or pets, or like life and business in general. I would say that I am probably like most active there. And then I also email my list pretty regularly. So if you want to see like more behind the scenes, like type of content that we talked about, like through this podcast, like most of that for me goes out to my email list actually more so than Instagram. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for being here today. This was wonderful, and I'm excited to put some of this into practice as well.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Amanda. It was